The following program is a Creative Magic Network production. Alrighty, hello everybody. Welcome. Come on in, sit down, relax, have a cup of coffee. This is a great day. It's sunny outside. I love it. I don't know where you live, but it's freaking sunny here in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. It's warm. It's autumn. I like autumn. I prefer summer, but it's warm and it's okay. That's life. Welcome to the Frederick Bai Show, and this radio podcast is about unleashing your creativity. We talk to experts. We step into the unknown. It is an inspirational, magical, intuitive radio podcast as we chat with charismatic enigmas. That's right. Radio hosts, business people, musicians, magicians, singers, everything in between. The tower of power, too sweet to be sour. Funky like a monkey. Hey, in this place, sky is the limit and space is the place. I am Frederick Bai. I'm sure you figured out. I am your favorite French Canucker. I am a mother Canucker, and I'm a businessman. I'm an artist. I'm your host. And today we're going to have an amazing show. Yes, because, let me ask you something. Let me ask you a few questions, people. Have you ever had any excuses on why you don't want to go after what you really want? Have you ever been down on yourself about your life and wallow in your misery, in your pity? Well, today we're going to blast you out of the water. We're going to blast you out of your sorrow, because right now we're going to talk to a man who has been blind his whole life. And, his name is Robert Branco. He's a lifelong resident of New Bedford, Massachusetts. He's been legally blind since birth, and Robert attended sight-saving classes in the public school system until his parents learned of the Perkins School for the blind. And Robert has self-published 4 books, including one chronicling his life at Perkins, 2 collections of essays, and a cookbook. How are you today, Robert?
I'm just fine. Thank you very much, Frederick, and thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome. Now, am I calling you Robert or am I calling you Bob?
You can call me Bob.
Okay, Bob is better. Okay, cool.
Sure.
No problem. All right, so the people who listen to this radio podcast, they're in a place in their lives where maybe they're 9-to-5 people and they're afraid to step out there, to put themselves out there, to write their book or to start the business. And they come up with, and I include myself in that, we come up with all these excuses, and sometimes we are perfectly, we're healthy, we see, we hear, we can talk, but we are down on ourselves for different reasons. And I mean, you've been legally blind since birth, and you're doing the thing, you're doing the writing and stuff. Now, give us an idea here of your background a little bit, right before we dive into what you're doing now.
Yes.
So
you mean prior to now?
Yeah. Prior to now, yeah.
Well, I obviously, as you stated at the beginning, I went to Perkins School for the Blind, graduated from there in 1977. Then I went on to college, got an associate's degree in business administration, and also a bachelor's degree in finance. Mm-hmm. After graduating college, I had several jobs, varying from customer service to health benefits counseling to telemarketing to reception. And, of course, now I do a lot of writing, and I volunteer a lot of my time teaching computers to beginners.
Wow. All right, let's go back to the beginning. Where you were born in Massachusetts?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Now, what kind of kid were you? I mean, okay, you've never seen it, have you?
I have. As a matter of fact, though I was born legally blind, I had a lot more sight back in the day than I do now.
Okay, and what does legally blind mean?
It means that you have to be within a certain degree of vision loss, which is documented by laws. I think it's 20/200. If you're less than 20/200 vision, you are classified as legally blind.
Okay.
So I was legally blind, yet I was able to identify color, shapes of humans, the sun and the moon, buildings, and other related scenery.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to travel without the cane for a long period of time.
Okay.
But the only thing that I really couldn't do, other than drive a car, obviously, well, I couldn't read the text in the school books. And that's why I had to learn Braille in the second grade.
Mm-hmm. And how was that? How was learning Braille? I mean, it seems maybe it's, it seems, how is it? Because it seems a little hard to learn, is it?
No, not really. The way I look at it, Frederick, it's like sign language. It's a language in itself.
Okay.
I thought it was a lot of fun learning it, actually.
Really? Why?
Probably because of the challenge, and probably because I knew I had to apply it for the rest of my life.
Okay.
So I got used to it and enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of kid were you? Were you a troublemaker? Were you, calm and docile? And, were you kind? Were you mellow? Or were you a troublemaker? Or what kind of kid were you?
I'd like to think that I functioned like any other normal kid in my generation did, whatever that meant.
So that means
I made a lot of friends.
A lot of drugs, no, just kidding.
Oh no! I stayed away from that community.
Oh, okay.
I had very warm and protective parents who cared enough to know what I should or shouldn't do.
Okay, cool. And all right, so now you go to elementary school. How was elementary school? Were you, were you accepted by everybody else? How was it? Were you bullied sometimes, or were you? How was it?
Well, let me answer the first question first.
Yeah.
Elementary school was okay, given the fact that we were all there for the same purpose in the same class. We all had sight difficulty. Right. As you said at the beginning, I was in a sight-saving class, which really means that everybody in the class had a differing degree of sight loss. We weren't all necessarily in the same grade, but where there were so few of us in the class, we received one-on-one attention from the instructor on a daily basis.
Well, that's good.
Now, in the first grade, I was bullied a little bit by a couple of kids who were older than me because I was brand new, and they thought they could do things that I would take the fall for. It worked for a while until one of the other classmates ratted them out to the teacher.
Okay. And all right, so and now you become what was because you studied in business administration, and you went to school, and now your parents, when it's time to make a career decision. A lot of parents freak out when you tell them, let's say you tell them you want to be an artist, or you want to be a writer, or you want to be, they freak out because to them it's not a quote unquote secure job. What was the mindset of the adults around you when it came to a career, your career, the career that you had to choose? Were they more traditional? You have to become an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer?
I would say that there was no opposition to what I wanted to do. Granted, a lot of people didn't understand how a blind person could accomplish certain things, but through time and through experience and through education, people began to understand that we could actually do the same things.
Right.
For instance, me with Braille and with computers, and they knew that to some extent I could be productive in the workforce at some point.
And how did you feel?
I felt the same way. I felt very confident in myself once I decided what I wanted to do.
Really?
Because I knew that
I never had that thing where, you ask yourself, what is my future going to be like? You know what I mean?
Well, we all have those moments. Sure. We question ourselves all the time. Every one of us.
Right. That's true. But you didn't question yourself more because you were blind, or you were getting more and more blind. Let's put it that way. I'm not sure.
Not necessarily. I realized what my limitations were going to be. For example, there were jobs that I applied for where the qualification was you needed a driver's license. Well, obviously, that wasn't going to be accomplished where I'm concerned. So, obviously, I could not pursue those kinds of jobs.
Okay. All right. Let's on with your books. Now, you wrote 4 books.
I did.
And how, first of all, they're all after 2010, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
okay.
I would say.
Let's start off with the first book. Your first book is My Home Away from Home.
My Home Away from Home, Life at Perkins School for the Blind.
Yeah. Why did you write a book about your life, and what was the intent, for writing that book?
Well, I think the idea came to me because I was always talking to my friends and former classmates and friends at school about our experiences at Perkins. We used to tell stories about what happened. We used to share memories. And at one point, son, maybe I ought to write a book because I have such a map at the school when I was there.
Right.
So one day I decided to act on I decided to write a book of 3 to 4.
Okay, what would be the challenging writing that kind of book? Something about yourself. I mean, like, you learn something when you write about your life. You got to look back and you got to look. It's written. You can't just reflect on what you've done, what you've accomplished. What did you learn about yourself, right?
Well, I don't think I understand the question. Could you elaborate
you wrote about your life, right? And sometimes when we write about our lives, it's an opportunity to reflect, and sometimes on ourselves, on our lives, and sometimes we learn something about ourselves when we write about ourselves. Because it's kind of like being a third party looking at our lives. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So did you learn something about your life, about yourself that you didn't know before writing a book?
That's hard for me to say because everything that I wrote about, I recalled already. I already knew about it and I was already aware of it.
Okay.
So it's very hard to say that I learned anything new about myself. Probably the best way for me to answer your question is to say that I probably learned that I would be able to get a book published because that was pretty much one of the first times in my life that I was able to accomplish that.
Okay. And all right, so once again, we're here with Robert Branco. That's right. I'm sorry, Bob Branco. He's a lifelong resident of New Bedford, Massachusetts. He's been legally blind since birth. Robert attended sight-saving classes in the public school system until his parents learned of the Perkins School for the Blind. And Robert has self-published 4 books, including one chronicling his life at Perkins, 2 collections of essays, and even a cookbook, ladies and gentlemen. Can you believe a cookbook? We're going to talk about that a little later. But right before continuing this conversation, guys, I just want to say you have a passion, something that fuels your curiosity. Well, on top of getting fascinating interviews such as this one straight to your inbox, when you subscribe to our free Creative Magic community, you will get super cool exclusive gifts in return, such as the ebook Happiness Quotes by the ambassador of happiness herself, Maura Sweeney, one of our hosts, that's right, and an exclusive conversation with 2 of my favorite people, Nigerian sensation Alex Okoroji and the blind blogger Max Ivy. Yes, another one of our hosts. That's right. We talk the influence of friends and college education on our lives, the competitiveness in a crowded field, the importance of business and financial education and arts and entrepreneurship, and more. And also, Alex has a special gift for you inside. That's right. She has a book. She has a book just for you for free. I promise you will get inspired and entertained. Subscribe at frederickby.com. That's Frederick with the C, by like bye-bye.com. All right. Let's move on. In your book that we were talking about, you talk about chapter 4, things that make you go home. What are those things?
Well, that chapter was about a lot of unpleasantry that was going on with me my first few months at Perkins. Apparently there were some misunderstandings about my lack of vision. And, when you have partial sight, Frederick, it's a tricky thing to explain to people. Some people think you have more sight than what you do have. Others think you don't have as much as you really have. And then when they perceive you as having a particular amount of sight that you don't have, especially if they think you have more, now you have a reputation of hiding your sight.
Wow, really?
And I believe that there were some folks at Perkins back in the day, back in my first year, who didn't know me very well, who really believed that I had more sight than I was letting on. Now, looking back, I say to myself, why would anybody think that I would want to leave New Bedford, Massachusetts, travel 65 miles to a private school for the blind, live there all the time except weekends, when I would rather be home just to fake a vision loss? That doesn't make any sense.
And why would you fake a vision loss?
I wouldn't.
No. I know that you wouldn't.
I didn't want to go to Perkins School. I wanted to stay here in the New Bedford schools and be here.
Mm-hmm. But why would someone fake a vision loss?
Oh, I don't even know why they would, or why someone would apply that somebody would. Mm-hmm. I really don't understand that. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the time, a couple of the house mothers would take me aside and ask me to do certain things to try to prove that I had more sight than I was letting on. It was getting very frustrating, to say the least. And finally, my mother and father intervened, and eventually the staff mellowed out and stopped their behavior.
Okay. Let me ask you this. You mentioned that, in the beginning, your sight, you could see colors. But
that's correct.
But gradually, it kind of, you could see less and less. Am I right?
Yes.
Now, tell me what was going on psychologically internally, when as your vision digressed.
First of all, I'd like to say that the process started happening when I was about 22 or 23 years old.
Oh, wow.
I started noticing a difference in my vision. I was finding it harder. I was finding it more difficult to see things that I used to see. And I guess because the process of losing the remainder of my sight lasted for about a 10-year period, the psychological adjustment wasn't as much as it would have been for some other people who lose their sight a lot quicker. I was able to learn my new situation gradually. I was able to adapt better, started to adapt my life better because I knew what was happening. I didn't know why it was happening, frankly, until much later when I went to the eye doctor in Dartmouth, and I found out that the process was called optic atrophy, and there was nothing much that the doctors could do at that point.
Okay. And okay, but did it? Because I interviewed another person, Michael Schwartz, who's also kind of lost his vision, and we talked a little bit about what went on inside of him, psychologically, emotionally, and it was devastating to him. Was it the same thing for you? Like, was it like, or was it like, okay, well, life goes on?
I think I was more concerned about how my mother and father would feel knowing that I was losing my vision.
Really?
Because they loved me and they were very sensitive, and I didn't want them to worry.
Okay.
So I kind of handled the situation very carefully with them. I knew something was different. Eventually, they found out, and then we had to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Talk to us about your trip to Cape Cod.
My trip to old Cape Cod, yes. One of my best adventures at Perkins School. What would you like to know?
Well, Cape Cod, that's South Africa.
No, Cape Cod is in Massachusetts.
I'm sorry about this. My bad. Tell us a fun, interesting story about it.
Well, first of all, let me explain why I went.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was in 6th grade at the time, and Perkins decided to send 5 elementary school classes to Cape Cod to learn a little bit more about exploration, nature, being self-sufficient, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we went there for 1 week. We got out of school. We didn't go to school that week. We spent the week on Cape Cod in Eastham, Massachusetts, at a Coast Guard station. There were approximately 35 kids who lived in that building. We learned how to cook our meals. We learned how to clean up after a meal. We learned about exploration, as I said. We took day trips. And we were very, very busy that week. It was fun.
All right. And sex, relationships, and more changes. You talk about that in your book.
Sure.
We want to know about that. I mean, that's a very interesting subject. How was the dating life? If there was any at Perkins?
Well, I was just going to say, before I explain that chapter, I just want to establish how Perkins was before I got there.
Sure.
They had a director that was very, very strict. Boys and girls were even separated in the classroom. We had girls on one side and boys on the other. There was like an imaginary line which boys and girls couldn't cross. They couldn't interact. They couldn't hold hands. They couldn't kiss. They couldn't see each other after school. It was very frustrating, I guess, for those boys and girls who wanted to be with the opposite sex. And so sometimes they got very brave and bold and resorted to some interesting extracurricular activities. Some were caught, and some weren't. Obviously, the ones weren't caught. We don't know what they were doing. But we know that it was happening on the campus. So Mr. Ben Smith, the director of Perkins, who took over in 1971 while I was there, decided to lighten up a little bit on the rules. He established some things that made boys and girls interact a little bit more. He instituted what was known as cottage dating. And when I say cottage, I mean cottages are where we lived on the campus. They're sort of like dormitories. The boys had their own cottages, and the girls had their own cottages. Well, cottage dating allowed boys and girls to visit each other in their own cottages. Granted, the dates were not private, but we were just grateful to see one another. We didn't care about how private things were or weren't. Just the mere fact that the new director allowed us to interact with the opposite sex was a big deal.
Okay. And okay, but I mean, and when did you start like dating? Did you start dating later on in life?
I started dating after I left Perkins.
Okay.
I could have dated at Perkins. There was no reason why I shouldn't have. But I was always worried about what was going to happen after graduation. Many of the kids, as you probably have gathered by now, did not live in Massachusetts, let alone 25 miles away from me. So it was going to be very difficult for the most part to maintain a relationship, no matter who you were, after graduating from Perkins, unless one of the partners made a real special change in his or her life. And that was going to be very hard to do as long as that person lived with parents. You know, you're not going to say to your parents, well, I'm going to move to Massachusetts, even though I'm only 18 years old, because I have a boyfriend out there. So, yes, I could have dated, but I kind of held back a little bit.
And I mean, and this might be a stupid question, I don't know, but what do you do on dates? You know, when you can't really drive or you can't really go to a theater, you know?
I go to many theaters. But, I always...
Okay, but I mean, just regular theaters? Okay.
Absolutely.
And I mean, but I mean, later on in your life, how was the dating life? I mean,
very normal. Very, very normal.
You cannot see the person.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. I don't have to see the person to know her inner beauty and her inner self and her inner personality and her kindness and her courtesy.
Maybe that's an advantage. Maybe that's a benefit. You know, that you don't see the person. So you gotta date somebody who's, you know, for their insights, for their right.
Well, go to chapter 30, and as I see it, there's a whole essay about that.
Chapter 30. I
think it's chapter 30, as I see it.
Well, is that another one of your book?
Yep, I wrote a whole chapter about the blind in relationship.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right, let's move on with Mr. Smith. Why did you write a whole chapter for getting a closer look at Mr. Smith?
Because I wanted people to understand Mr. Smith and how sensitive and caring he was. To begin with, he was the only visually impaired director Perkins ever had, at least up until now. Mm-hmm. Not that matters one way or the other about how sensitive and caring he was. He was anyway. And he looked at the school and he changed it. A lot of the reasons why he changed it was because of legislation that allowed blind college-bound kids to be mainstream in public schools. So obviously he had to figure out a new direction for Perkins.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, gradually Perkins evolved into what it is today, which is a school for the multi-handicapped.
Okay.
Perkins is a lot different today, Frederick, than it was 40 years
How
ago.
so?
Believe me.
Before it was just...
It's all about the multi-handicapped now. That's all, basically. It's not about regular blind kids who just had a vision loss.
Okay. And do you think Mr. Smith had a lot to do with it, or it just happened that way?
Mr. Smith had to do something about it because laws were changing. People like me were being mainstreamed in public schools. People like me weren't going to Perkins anymore. So in order to keep Perkins open, for lack of a better term, Mr. Smith had to figure out another way.
Okay. Seems to me that you have a lot of respect for Mr. Smith. I mean, he's an important person in your life.
Oh, yes, I had a lot of respect for Mr. Smith.
Did you ever have, like, intimate conversations with him?
Not very often.
Okay.
I remember one day I went into his office with my father because my father raised some money for Perkins, for the children of Perkins. He had a fundraiser at his nightclub and raised about $1,500 from the bands that were performing who donated their salaries to the children of Perkins. So I remember going into Mr. Smith's office with my dad when he presented Mr. Smith with the check. And he told Mr. Smith that this was not for Perkins itself because he was afraid a lot of it would go to administrative costs. No, this was going to be for the children of Perkins.
Wow. Okay. One last little question about that book. How was it to leave Perkins? Did you know?
It was very emotional. I think one of the biggest emotional experiences that I've ever had in my life.
Why was that?
Because I was about to lose all of my friends. I wasn't going to see them as much as I had seen them for the past few years.
Right. And, okay. Now, you went to college, business administration, community college, right?
I went to Bristol. I was actually mainstreamed with sighted students. Just about all the time I was in the.
Yeah.
So
how did you do it by braille during that time, or did you learn with the I'm sorry, what's the term, braille? Braille, yeah. Did you learn?
I hired readers from the college, students that wanted to make a little bit of money on the side to help me with my studies. Most of the time, the money came from the local commission for the blind, to pay for readers for me. And then a lot of my books were recorded on tape through a company called Recording for the Blind, which is now known as Learning Ally. So I had a lot of my studies done that way, too.
Okay.
And then when the professor allowed me to, I was able to record the lessons, although some professors were very particular about what I was going to record in class.
Right. All right, once again, we're here with Bob Branco. He's a lifelong resident of New Bedford, Massachusetts. He's been legally blind since birth, and Robert attended sight-saving classes in the public school system until his parents learned of the Perkins School for Blind. Robert has self-published 4 books until one chronicling his life, including one chronicling his life at Perkins, 2 collections of essays, and a book. And by the way, guys, right before continuing this conversation, are you an Amazon shopper? When you use our Amazon links at frederickbuy.com, Amazon kicks back a few bucks to the network to help cover production costs at no additional cost to you. No hidden fees, no BS, no nothing. So if you like what you hear, you can help by going over to frederickbuy.com, Frederick with a C, buy.com. Click on the blog page and click the Amazon link in the sidebar for all your online shopping. It is really that simple, and you can bookmark it to find it easier. All right, your other book, I see it. It's a memoir, right? It's more of a memoir. You talk about... Yes,
it's all about blindness and my perceptions of it, along with some legislative facts about it.
Now, how do blind find employment?
finding a job is a job in itself, as I said in Chapter 2. I mean, we have to go almost a whole complete day looking for work, and we have to prove it more than anybody else. We have to spend more energy, I think, than an average sighted person to keep up. Not with just employment, but with a lot of other aspects of life. Mm-hmm. Because society puts obstacles in our way because we are blind. We have to keep proving and proving and proving. And it's sometimes a lifelong process.
And when you say obstacles, what do you mean? You mean that employers wonder if you can do the job right? Or?
Oh, sure. A lot of employers are very fearful about hiring the blind. They don't really understand what we could do. Many of them probably have never seen a blind person or at least seen one who was working. So they don't know, and that's not their fault if they don't know. Mm-hmm. But see, we have to educate. And the agencies who advocate for the blind also have to educate.
Talk to us a little bit about the technology for the blind. I mean, I work with Max Ivy. He's blind, and man, he's doing everything. I mean, he's doing a podcast. He's writing books. He's coaching. He writes emails, uses Skype, everything. In your book, Chapter 4, you talk about that technology for the blind and so they can be more independent. Talk to us a little bit about that. What's the difference you've been, what progress did you see from, let's say, the 70s until now?
Well, obviously the technology for the blind, as compared to what was back in the 70s, is pretty much parallel with any other technology that anybody else uses. Mm-hmm. You used to have your watches with the hands on them. You don't see that anymore. It's all digital. Your phones, whether you're a sighted person or a blind person, a smartphone is a smartphone. So obviously we all know the comparisons between today's smartphones and what we had way back in the day before the cell phone was even invented. Mm-hmm. Computers.
What would be the one technology that really blows your mind? Like one that really, really impresses you?
I would say the smartphone, especially Siri. Okay. You're able to ask it to do certain things verbally, and it'll do them. It's amazing sometimes some of the things that I've witnessed.
Right. Self-esteem. You have a whole chapter about that. Chapter 9.
Yes, I do.
How do the blind deal with self-esteem? Because you say, you have obstacles, as you mentioned, right? You have bigger.
Well, I think that part of it has to do with the individual and how well he or she copes with rejection. And let's face it, we have to cope with rejection all the time. I can't begin to tell you the number of resumes I've written over the years looking for work and getting turned down day after. You all know why. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have a college degree or two, so qualifications, it's the disability. So a lot of us, we get rejected about a lot of things that other people do in life. And depending on your attitude and your outlook and your upbringing and your confidence building, it all depends on what kind of self-esteem you have. I know a lot of blind people who get very depressed, and they don't know what they're going to be doing from day to day.
Right.
And I can understand why. I really, really can. It's very difficult. We keep having to prove and prove and prove.
What do you do to remain positive?
I'm very involved. As I said to you earlier, I volunteer a lot. I teach computers. I write for a blog. I run a bowling league. I belong to several advisory councils and organizations locally. I have a romantic relationship. I do a lot of things to occupy my time, and I try to remain as productive as possible.
But I mean, do you do affirmations? Do you meditate? Do you know what I mean?
No. I don't bother doing any of that. No, not really.
More an action-oriented kind of guy. Like you more do things.
Yeah, I would say.
Okay.
I would say.
Okay, that's cool. Do you think that society is ignorant of the blind's abilities? They undermine, do you think they're ignorant of it?
I think that to say society is ignorant probably is too general a term. I think there are a lot of people who don't understand what we can do, as I said earlier.
Yeah, there you go.
So I think that's the way I should answer that.
Mm-hmm. And do you think the unemployment rate of the blind did it progress as it should have? Did it?
No.
Why?
I don't believe so, and I really don't know why. We have two consumer organizations of blind people here in this country, two major ones, the National Federation of the Blind and the American Council of the Blind. And I was a member of the National Federation of the Blind from 1981 to 1988. And one of the things that I kept hearing for those 7 years was that the unemployment rate of the blind was 70%. We're trying to work on ways to...
I'm sorry, 70%.
70% unemployment rate amongst the blind.
Wow.
That was back in 1981. And today I'm hearing that it's close to 80%. So that's why I have the questions that I have. Even though the consumer organizations do their best to advocate for us, to try to promote the fact that we can work and hold down very productive jobs, why is it that the unemployment rate of the blind is still high today when it shouldn't be? There's supposed to be progress in that area, or at least I thought.
Okay, 80% unemployment rate. How?
That's a very high figure.
Now you have to pay for it. Let's say a dog or a cane or transportation costs.
Sure.
How do you make ends meet? I don't understand. Like, how do you make ends meet while living with physical disabilities? You know what I mean?
It's not easy. It's really not easy.
It's not easy for a guy who can see, a person, or a man or woman who can see. How do you guys do it? I mean, it must require perseverance, and I don't know. Go ahead, I'll let you speak.
It requires a lot of knowledge and budget.
Right. And
you have to really know your budget, be able to know what you can afford. A lot of people ask me, "Hey, Bob, why don't you get a smartphone?" Well, I can't afford a smartphone right now. I have to take care of other bills. I have to take care of other necessities before I start thinking about a smartphone. That's just another bill which I can't afford.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to live through it, I think, to really appreciate the machinations of how you try to live as a blind person. Do I want to work? Absolutely. I want to work. I've tried very hard. I do some writing, as I said. I have a very, very limited income with that, but at least it's something. So I try my best to do what I can to sustain an affordable income to be able to make ends meet.
What would you tell somebody else out there? Because I think you're an inspiration for people who are also not blind necessarily. Because as you mentioned, you have to go the extra mile to find a job and to just move forward. So for the people out there who are, like I said in the beginning, they're 9-to-5 people. They're afraid of what's next. They don't want, they are hesitant in jumping into what they really want to do. And, what would you tell them when they're discouraged, when they're maybe depressed, they don't like their job, or maybe don't even have a job? What would you tell them?
I would tell them to try to remain as active as possible. Take a deep breath, relax. The sun will rise tomorrow. You have to continue having faith and hope that your life will improve. Try to figure out the direction and achieve your goals, whatever they may be, and move forward if you can.
Right. You're very practical. You're very practical. You just do A, B, C, D.
Thank you.
That's right.
All right. Consumer Vision. Next month will mark the 10th anniversary, first of all, of my magazine, which is called Consumer Vision.
Consumer Vision, yeah.
Yep. We publish once a month, though there are a lot for the blind. They have a lot of subscribers. Consumer Vision with her. Doesn't matter if he's blind or not. We deal with the consumer. We talk about issues that we face, whatever they are. Right. And we have about 250 subscribers. The magazine is being read in 4 continents around the world. We've come a long way in 10 years. We have a good writing staff, a good editing staff, and you can subscribe if you want to. I can give you the email address as to how you can subscribe if you would like to.
Absolutely.
Bob Branco, that's BOB, BRANCO 93 @gmail.com. If you send a test email to that address, I will electronically put you in the group.
Awesome. We have a few minutes left. I'd like to know, let me ask you this, because you wrote 2 other books, cookbooks, and the other one is Weighing Things Up, Essay on Trends, Technology, and Present-Day Society. All available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple, Kobo, Smashwords. Let me ask you this. How do you deal with the loneliness sometimes associated with work or, just disability? What would you advise somebody? Because I think sometimes it must get lonely a little bit.
Well, I am fortunately not very lonely these days.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have a real special lady in my life, and we spend a lot of time together.
Okay.
But there have been times in my life where I have been extremely lonely, and it's not fun. But here's the thing, Frederick. Some people would say, ooh, what's wrong with being lonely? You have a lot of privacy. You get to do as you want. Sure, we all need our privacy once in a while, but we don't need it 24/7 or at least, half the day or whatever. We want our privacy, but yet we want to interact and be busy.
Yeah.
So loneliness is something that's judgmental. It's not a fact. We all relate and react to it a lot differently than everybody else.
Right. But I mean, what would you tell them? What would you tell them? Just get yourself out there. Just keep going.
I would encourage, if somebody felt lonely and isolated and depressed, the first thing that I would probably tell them is join something. Join an organization. Join a club. You talked about one of your books, right? Actually, in Weighing Things Up. I probably do, yes. And that helps. Make some new friends. Go out to eat.
Yeah,
take trips.
Don't you find that now that everybody's just in their own little corner nowadays? Everybody's just doing their own little thing, and don't bother me. Don't just see.
Well, I know it's hard to recruit people in well-established organizations. Harder to recruit than ever before, like the Lions clubs and even the National Federation of the Blind. Recruit young people today.
Why?
I'd like to think it's because they're better off, or they're not as rejected as the blind were decades ago, and that the ones who needed the federation or the American Council, But I really don't know. It could be that, or maybe they just want to fend for themselves. They want to do their own thing. They don't want to be part of any group. Life is more fast-paced now than it was before, too. I mean, volunteerism is not the same as it once was. You can't find volunteers to help you out like you once did. Right. Our lives are fuller for whatever reason.
Right. All right, Bob, thank you very much. Where can we find you? And where can we
Well, you can find me at... Sure. Well, the website to find out more about all of my books is www.dvorkin, that's D as in dog, V as in Victor, ORKIN.com/Robert Branco/. When you go to that site, you will see information about my editor and her work, along with my books, what they're about, how much they cost, how to get them, and what other sites those books happen to be on.
Yeah. I love interviewing people, like you, because you're the real inspiration. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you, Frederick.
It's true, because, you're the real, because you live this day to day, and I think you always, people with disabilities or people, who have big challenges always have an interesting story to tell. So, well, thank you for telling your story.
Yes.
Sorry, man, Bob, by the way. And
well, that's quite all right.
I'm sorry?
That's quite all right.
And why do we call you Robert? Why is it Robert or Bob? What's the because I see Robert and then.
Yes. Oh, my friends call me Bob, so I figure why not call me Bob?
Okay, cool. All right, Bob, have a great day. Thank you again for this interview, and man, good luck in the future. Much success to you, really.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share it with everybody.
All right. Cool, Bob. Have a great day, and good luck in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Alrighty, guys. Alrighty. Thank you very much again, Robert, Bob, or whatever. Thank you very much for this interview. I really appreciate it. And like I said during the interview, I always like to interview people like him. Always, always, always. And guys, by the way, when you pick up his books from frederickbuy.com, our website at Frederick with a C, like bye-bye.com, Amazon kicks back a few bucks to the show, and it helps cover production costs at no additional cost to you. No hidden fees, no nothing. So if you like this show, you can help by going over to frederickbuy.com, click on his page in the blog, and click the link to his book. It is really that simple. And also, I would like to thank everybody who pledged our Patreon page. You are really helpful to the show, and we are grateful for your help. In case you're wondering, Patreon is a simple way for you to contribute to the network every single month. It gets super cool. Exclusive rewards in return. I promise you'll love the perks. Our Patreon page is at frederickbuy.com. Click Patreon in the header, and the money is used to cover our production costs and enhancements. It's also used to cover our editing time to the different, and also sharing to the different podcast channels. You can contribute for as low as $1. And also, guys, the Creative Magic Store is open, and well, we have a bunch of things in there. We have T-shirts. It's all about design with meaning. It's made to inspire you, to tap into your intuition, and to add a little bit of magic into your life. That's right. We have recommended reading. We have recommended DVDs. We have T-shirts, mugs, a bunch of things that will inspire you. Just make your life better. I guarantee you that. And also, guys, this podcast is FRWE free every time you download it on iTunes or Stitcher. So please go over there, subscribe. It is listener supported. So tell a friend, leave a 5-star review. It really helps a brother out. It really helps a brother out, baby. And it's time for me to ride off into the sunset. I'm going to take a nap, and I'm going to be busy during the afternoon, answer a few emails. And that's about it, guys, for me. So with this, stay safe. And don't forget, live with purpose, passion, and love. Bye-bye.